And a very good morning to Peter Bleksley. How nice to see you looking very resplendent in such hot weather. You know, people are wandering about in shorts, wearing, you know, what you might call summer tops, but not you and not me. Suited and booted, professionally.
Well, thank you, Governor. Standards matter.
They do.
A pinch and a punch for the first day of the month.
Thank you very much indeed.
Now, it's 2025, so whatever you do, don't do that in the workplace.
No.
Even if it's in jest.
Yes.
Even if it's the gentlest
You can only
pinch
say it now, can't you?
and the tiniest punch,
Yeah.
or else that will end up in a tribunal, probably.
It probably will, and you could end up losing your job altogether. But don't worry, it'd be all right if you work for the BBC, though, 'cause it's very difficult to lose your job there. Because it doesn't matter how bad things are, it doesn't matter how terrible management becomes, or what people do. You can, you know, be soliciting people on your phone while you're reading the news. You could be sending pictures of your backside to people while you're reading the news. You could be encouraging anti-Semitic behaviour down at a music festival where you've got 500 employees all having a great time. Nothing ever happens to you.
Mike, you're a veteran broadcaster,
Mm.
okay? And I've been knocking around this media world for 25
Not
years
too
or
bad.
so.
Yeah.
So we both know that when it comes to live broadcasting, there is invariably a dump button
Yes.
or some other mechanism
Yes.
through which, with a built-in time delay, the minute somebody starts spouting something which is utterly unacceptable, you can pull the plug on it, you can cut to something else, play an advert, go to a presenter, leave a test card.
It's not, especially if you've got 500 people in a position to help you out to do that.
Of course, it's so basic and simple. And as a producer from another media outlet said to me, Peter, he said, I know all about the dump button. He said, my finger hovers over it whenever you're speaking. Right? So, yeah, everybody in broadcasting knows these facilities exist.
Right. Although I have been told, and I don't know how it works in television, but I have been told that at BBC Radio, they don't have a dump button. And certainly they've had instances where people have sworn and said things, and they haven't been able to do anything about it. Because apparently the BBC is so grandiose that they feel like they don't need one.
Well, I find that astonishing, absolutely
I know.
astonishing, and I'm not entirely convinced by that.
I'm not either.
Certainly with television, there was ample opportunity for somebody just to pull the plug
it appears
on that.
It appears that Tim Davie intervened in some way, because he apparently told them not to make it available on demand. This particular, you know, what's his name, Bob Vylan, who's now had his career pretty much sliced and diced by the American State Department and also his own management. So, you know, well done, mate. You may have made yourself famous for 5 minutes, but I'm afraid that'll be the end of your gravy train for a while. But so he apparently knew enough about how offensive it was to say we mustn't make it available on demand, but he didn't know enough about how offensive it was to actually just cut the whole broadcast, which he could have done.
Well, a couple of points emanating from that. Firstly, somebody revealed on social media yesterday that apparently Bob Vylan had established 2 limited companies.
Yes, he has.
Through which he was
I saw
paid
those at the weekend.
In order to minimise his tax liability.
Both of which seem to have about 115 or 120 grand in.
Somebody said, how very left-wing of him.
Isn't it just socialists? I love them all, don't you?
Yeah.
Right. Also, the other thing that people haven't seen, and I saw this again on social media yesterday, and I tweeted it out, before his ghastly chanting that he did, he also told a story about working for a record company and working for this fat, horrible, bald man who it turns out was a Zionist, as he calls him, and he saw his name later on a sheet of paper of people objecting to kneecap playing at Glastonbury. So he turned his story about a former work experience that he had into another anti-Jewish rant.
And next it raises not my most powerful point that I shall raise this morning, but I've long had concerns about Mr. Davie, a man of a particular age, who wears a suit. No tie, of course, because he's a progressive.
No tie.
So he can't wear a tie, you know what I mean? That would be far too submissive of him.
Yes.
But he wears suits and white trainers.
Yes, a bit worrying that, isn't it?
Mate, buy some shoes.
Buy some shoes,
Act your age.
Yes.
But anyway, he might be looking for a new job before long.
He might well be.
It is ghastly. Whatever the excuses that are put forward by whosoever was in that position of responsibility at the weekend and did not pull the plug.
Exactly right, because considering there were so many people there, you would think, you know, it'd be one thing to say, look, it was an under sort of utilised group of people, it was a weekend, sometimes, you know, the wrong people are on and the wrong people are in charge. This is the big sort of, you know, crown, jewel in the crown of what the BBC do every single year. They spend an absolute fortune on it, you know, they own it, and they broadcast it around the world, and so they are in many ways complicit. in broadcasting this ghastly, horrible, heinous message from this bloke, you know?
Across their TV, their radio channels, the iPlayer, they splash it everywhere.
Yeah. Now, here's something interesting, because Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, who's been a bit quiet up to now in the first year of this government, she actually said this: when you have one editorial failure, it's something that must be gripped. When you have several, it becomes a problem of leadership. Now, who do you think that made me think of?
Yes, of course.
Not just Tim Davie, but Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of this great country, because he, as I'm afraid, is about to celebrate, or commemorate at the very least, or commiserate 1 year in power. There's all sorts of pieces being written. I'm writing a couple as well, hoping to have a couple of pieces published this week. You know, there is nothing going right for this man. Let's have a look at Liz Kendall, because it turns out that despite rolling over and giving in to the rebels, they've not said that they're happy with it, and they've not said that they're going to vote for the welfare bill later on today. Here's what Liz Kendall had to say.
Our plans to ensure that people with severe, lifelong health conditions will never be reassessed, removing all the unnecessary and unacceptable anxiety this brings. And our plans to legislate for a right to try, guaranteeing that trying work in and of itself will never lead to a benefit reassessment, giving people the confidence to take the plunge and try work, something many organisations have called for years. But, Mr. Speaker, there have also been real concerns about our initial proposals. We have listened carefully, and we are making positive changes as a result.
We have listened carefully, we're making positive changes as a result, but I'm afraid that's not going to be good enough, and the Rebel MPs are going to humiliate the PM. By the way, not wishing to pick on Liz Kendall in particular, but why has she come dressed as a dentist?
I think her speech made matters worse.
Yeah,
yesterday.
I think so. I think so.
She irritated a lot of backbench MPs.
Well, this is the problem, you see. When Keir Starmer suddenly, I mean, even, what's her face? I'll come back to that in a minute. When Diane Abbott, when she came out yesterday and said, is Keir Starmer seriously expecting us to believe that the only reason that he thought the welfare bill was going well was because he was abroad?
Yeah.
Right? And that actually he didn't really understand what was going on because he was abroad.
Yeah,
seriously.
So you don't have dispatch boxes when you're sitting on an aeroplane?
No.
For hours and hours and hours?
Right.
You don't have papers you can read through when you're at 36,000 feet?
Nobody's telling you from Downing Street, by the way, there's a bit of rebellion growing, but he should have known because one of his chief whips quit, do you remember?
Yeah.
Right in the middle of it.
Utterly ludicrous. Just symptomatic of the appalling lack of leadership that this country suffers from.
Exactly right. So it looks as though at the moment, it's still on a knife edge though. I mean, I'm not quite sure what the timing of this is. I presume it will be later on this afternoon or this evening, where the welfare bill, which by the way, according to the Financial Times, for those of you who are worried about what it's going to do, it's still going to push 150,000 people into poverty. Despite the fact that they've diluted it, they won't be actually stopping the revolt because dozens and dozens of rebels are holding out. The budget black hole will still be around about 4 billion because they can't actually slice and dice it anymore. So all of this sort of activity that's happened over the weekend has led to nothing. And the problem for people like Starmer is when you've got an organisation that's so bad and doesn't work, when you go, right, now we're going to fix it, actually you can't fix it.
I had the entertaining pleasure of being on a train the other day with a deliciously indiscreet Labour MP.
Excellent.
Who got elected at the last election. So fairly new to Parliament and all of that. And of course we were talking about this potential rebellion and all that, and this MP said, yep, they couldn't vote for the bill as it stood and what have you, but he was hoping that an agreement would be reached by today. And he told me how he was really wrestling with his conscience because to vote against the party line is not something he was elected or wanted to do, but he felt he was going to have to. And in part, I see where he's coming from, because despite these new amendments that Starmer's put forward, one of them means that if you get injured and disabled next year, heaven forbid, you will be paid less than somebody who got injured and disabled last year.
Yes.
So how can somebody's disability of last year be more valuable than someone's disability of next year?
I can help you with this. It's called two-tier disability benefit.
There you go.
And he's now introduced it, because now we've got two-tier everything else, and Starmer was obviously worried we didn't have two-tier disability benefit, so he's introduced it.
Lord Hermer will not be inviting you round for dinner at the weekend for using that two-tier expression.
What a shame.
You know how upset he gets about that, especially when you talk about two-tier judiciary, two-tier justice, two-tier policing.
Do you remember when Keir Starmer was asked it and he said, nonsense? He's really angry about it. You know, apparently there's no such thing as two-tier anything unless it's two-tier Keir.
So I couldn't possibly encourage anybody to use the expression two-tier, but two-tier is really quite two-tier kind of entertaining.
It really is. And I mean, the trouble is he walks right into it every single chance he gets. And Dan Hodges, right, I can't stop talking about Dan Hodges because Dan Hodges started the year of Keir Starmer's kind of, you know, reign on July the 4th, 2024, of sort of believing in him and thinking that, you know, this will be a change from what we've seen, the Tories and the constant, you know, psychodramas, the change of leadership, you know, people trying to stab each other in the back. His headline today, I think, says it all. It's the most cack-handed, incompetent welfare bill in living memory. And he's one of their supporters. Yeah. You know.
Yeah, exactly. And he was turned some weeks ago, wasn't he? Even now, he cannot look himself in the mirror.
No,
Mr. Hodges,
he comes on with me, and he's more right-wing than I am now on this government because they are so completely and utterly hopeless. Basically, virtually every penny of Liz Kendall's £5 billion saving has vanished. So how will the black hole be filled? This is on that speech she was saying was dreadful yesterday. Ms Kendall was asked how these collective U-turns would be funded, and she refused to answer. MPs would be told at the next fiscal event.
Well, doesn't that feed into another story that we might discuss this morning?
Indeed.
About the tax-free limit on ISAs.
Well, what a stupid idea this is.
Isn't it? Absolutely
this woman,
ludicrous.
Rachel Reeves, it was described to me, and I'm going to use this a lot, I think, the other day, that this government now is like the final stages of the Crystal Maze. You know, and you know you're about to be kicked out, so you're just literally panicking and grabbing anything you can to go, oh, this'll do it, stop that, give this, that, you know. And that's what she's doing. You know, ISAs are a great way for people to save money. You know, I wasn't until relatively recently wealthy enough to do it. But, you know, I knew plenty of people did, and lots of people put money in ISAs for their kids and all the rest of it. £20,000 is a limit. She's talking about bringing it down to £5,000.
Anybody fortunate enough to have some spare cash that they want to save would act very responsibly in getting an ISA and utilising that tax-free limit on those savings.
Right.
What a sensible all-round thing to do. Isn't it something that as a government you would want to encourage anybody that could have savings to invest in?
You would think so.
Oh,
because,
absolutely.
You know, why not encourage people not to do what the government's doing, which is to borrow and borrow and borrow to the point where you actually literally drive yourself into debtor's prison?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Instead, actually be responsible, make plans for your future, make it so that if something bad does happen to you, you lose your job or something immediately cuts short your money supply, you've got a little bit of stuff hanging around for a rainy day.
Exactly. And a tax-free limit, £20,000 a year.
Yeah.
And Rachel Reeves is looking to cut that apparently to maybe 4,000 or 5,000. Yeah. And what's that going to claw back?
Exactly.
What money is she going to get? It's not going to bring in billions upon billions upon billions, is it? But again, you see, politics of envy. Right. Somebody's got also, a few quid they can save.
They haven't been able, despite the so-called, massive majority they've got, they haven't been able to push through their own policies with their own backbenchers. So now they're coming after everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, because the welfare bill is 100 billion quid, right? Yeah. This will save them, what, 1 or 2 maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah. And yesterday, there was some kind of think tank, I think it was called the Intergenerational Foundation.
Yeah, sounds great.
That put forward some kind of suggestion that the old age pension should now be means tested.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that those perhaps better off.
There is a cohort of people in this country who think that pensioners are all well off and they shouldn't be able to get tax-free benefits at all because, you know, the young people are suffering. I mean, I think that's absolutely, quite frankly, insulting to the people who built this country.
Well, right? I qualify for my old age pension in December of this year. I'll be 66 in December.
Okay.
And
you're lucky then. Normally you don't get it to about 68 now, do you?
Yeah, well, I've qualified for it at 66, and I've paid in since I was 16 years old.
Right.
So there will be 50 years of national insurance payments every year without fail.
Right.
I think I'm entitled to an old age pension.
Sure you are.
Even if I continue to work, if I'm fortunate enough that the phone keeps ringing.
Of course you are.
I'm entitled for it. I've paid in.
Why should they nick all that money and say you don't need it because you're well enough off, because you've actually been a success in your life and you've actually managed to raise a family, buy a property, have a couple of nice holidays? You know, why should you be punished for having done that? This is the trouble. They're raising a generation of people on welfare who don't work and punishing the people who did work in order to pay for it. Huh?
You've nailed it, Mike. You've nailed it. That's absolutely isn't it? Surely.
Yeah.
Because I and my wife have worked tirelessly, continually throughout our adult lives.
Yeah.
Well, you could say we weren't even adults at 16 when we started work.
Right.
Since we were teenagers.
Yeah.
And we've worked and paid tax and national insurance and worked, dare I say it, blooming hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no. They've done well. They've been sensible. They've been frugal to an extent.
Yeah.
They've not wasted their money. They've saved for a rainy day and to help their kids. Punish them.
Yeah. Take more money off them. Absolutely shocking. It's 21 minutes past 6. We're running slightly late. Carlin Nutsford says, is it possible the BBC producer responsible for not pulling the Bob Vylan streaming decided to let the idiot spew his vile bile in order to bang him to rights? Nah, they're not that bright. No. Great show, Mike. I don't think they are. Although it has shown, as somebody pointed out yesterday, that this country has not yet completely sold up and given away the land to the maniacal left, because actually the backlash against this bozo and kneecap and all the rest of it has actually been pretty good. And I'm quite pleased to see it, and I'm pleased to see the government doing it as well. So we were talking this morning about cheese actually being the stuff of nightmares. Apparently there's a scientific study, which we'll tell you about in a minute. It means that cheese actually does give you nightmares. I got one from Steve in Cornwall. He says, morning, Mike. I had a cheese sandwich before bed last night and had a nightmare that Keir Starmer won an election. It was scary. He was going to punish OAPs, farmers, the disabled, while secretly smuggling tens of thousands of illegal fit criminals from across the channel. Anyway, I'm off to the shower to get back to reality. Very good, Steve. I see what you did there.
Steve has stolen my gag. He's stolen my gag because I was going to say I'm going to eat cheese on toast before I go to bed every night. Right. So that I have nightmares that distract me from Starmer.
Yes, absolutely.
But Steve's done a much better job than me.
Absolutely fantastic. Now let's have a look at a bit of death to the IDF, because that was the chant, of course, that went up at Glastonbury from this idiot who's now known. His real name is Pascal something, isn't he? He's double-barreled. Pascal something or other. This was outside Woolwich Crown Court yesterday. You tweeted about this because the obviously what's now going to happen with all these lefty maniacs is that, you know, from the river to the sea is no longer going to be the chant. That's not anti-Semitic enough. So now they want to chant death to the IDF. These activists were supporting 18 people who are accused of storming an Israeli defence firm's UK base with a repurposed prison van. And they were they're alleged to have been trying to cause £1 million of criminal damage. Obviously, it's an ongoing case, so we can't talk about the actual case, but have a look at this. Now, you asked quite a pertinent question on Twitter yesterday, which was to the police.
Yes.
Are you likely to do anything about this?
To the Met Police, because yesterday afternoon, Avon and Somerset announced that they were launching a criminal investigation into what Bob Vylan had said at Glastonbury. Right. So by the very same token, when I'd seen that video and I reposted it and put a question to the Met, are you considering a criminal investigation? Entirely reasonable question. Yeah. Also, those eagle-eyed people that may have watched that clip on YouTube, you will see clearly there is a Metropolitan Police officer there. Yes. So this is something the Met already knew all about. Right. So I've asked that question. A number of people, of course, reposted it and put comments on there, and it reached quite a wide audience. I'm yet to hear from the Metropolitan Police.
Right. And what's the point for the Metropolitan Police to put officers there? Because presumably they're putting them there in case there's any kind of problem or any kind of trouble. Are they recording what's going on? Are they likely to go back to them later and say, we're going to charge you, and you, because we've got video evidence of you? I mean, it's hard to know what the police's game here is.
Well, they should have had body-worn video on, and it should have been recording. Right. It's exactly what it was designed for. Right. If they haven't, that would be a major oversight, and one would have to ask, why not?
Well, this is it. And why would you bother putting police at an event like that if you're not going to be careful to arrest people who are breaking the law?
The Metropolitan Police hold a huge degree of responsibility for what happened at Glastonbury with Bob Vylan. Yes. Those senior officers that are in charge, because for months upon months now, they have appeased the pro Palestine mob as they've marched on the streets of London with their chant. And that from the river to the sea means from the River Jordan into the Med, you expunge that part of the world of Jews. It's a utterly genocidal, anti-Semitic chant. And the Met Police in the past have cowardly said that it could be construed as something else. Just like they've cowardly said in the past calling for jihad. Could
that's
be something other than...
It could be you just want a cheese sandwich.
The war.
You know, jihad.
Moral striving against some kind of nonsense that they call it, right? This
and that,
utter appeasement
might look like an ISIS flag, but it's not actually an ISIS flag.
And this appeasement, of which the Metropolitan Police have been so guilty, their senior officers, in not telling their front line to act and arrest and drag those people out of those crowds, that appeasement has empowered people so that you then get that vile Bob Vylan standing up at Glastonbury, empowered to chant what he did, thinking that they can act with impunity.
Yeah, because it gives them the idea that actually they normalise it. So, you know, everybody gets involved in it and it's fine.
And can you imagine how Jewish people in the UK today must feel with this going on time and time and time again?
Absolutely shocking. It's disgraceful what's been allowed to happen because, as I say, and a lot of people who are doing that chanting, and I don't count some of these sort of, you know, extremist protesters, but an awful lot of people at Glastonbury will have been doing it because it's trendy, because they think it's all right to do it, because they haven't been worried about actually being arrested for doing it, and that's part of the problem.
Because they're slacked-brained half-wits.
They are,
who want to be a part of something. In between lentil-munching, reading The Guardian and naming their children after planets, they want to be part of something. They're pathetic.
I know, they really are. Another piece of news this morning, and it's from Jim. The Royal Train's been scrapped. Bango's the only train in the UK that runs on time. Probably a good idea, otherwise our government will paint it in rainbow colours and use it to distribute illegal immigrants all over the country. Probably right, big spread in the sun. Royal Train stopping, and it shows a lot of pictures of the Queen. Used to love the Royal Train. I can see why they don't need it anymore. But the thing about it running on time, I was supposed to meet my son last night. He was coming down from Manchester on his way to Sussex, and we were going to have a quick pint together. His train was 90 minutes late. 90 minutes late, so by the time he got here it was too late for me to see him.
I know, I love trains. I love travelling by train.
You do a lot of that,
It's my favourite form of transport, when they run on time and when people aren't putting their feet on the seats and they're not covering them in graffiti and they're not dropping litter and when they're not cancelled or delayed. I do love train travel. This train is going to go into a museum apparently, but I think there's a business opportunity here for somebody, because there are some astonishing railway journeys that can be done in the UK. Absolutely beautiful. You know those parts of the country that haven't yet been ruined by mass migration, terminal decline.
Or Angela Rayner's concrete blocks plan. Or Ed Miliband, apparently he wants to put 347 square miles of solar panels over Britain.
Well, those parts of the country that have not or will not be ruined by such policies, of which we are fortunate to have quite a few, have train lines going through them, and the views, the sights are absolutely magnificent. I'm sure people fortunate enough to be able to pay the fare would go on journeys on the former Royal Train and might enjoy sleeping and eating and gazing
Make it
out
kind
the
of
window
Orient Express type experience.
and all of that. Yeah, exactly. So
but you know what would happen, because they'd have to use the same train track as everybody else, and they'd probably get stuck behind some train that was from the Avanti West Coast Line, you know, which is what my son was on yesterday, and just going absolutely nowhere. I was once stuck on a train coming back from somewhere, I can't remember where it was, and it was stuck, and they said, we have to wait here, and I said, well, how long for? And they said, well, we don't know. Why? Oh, well, there's a train further up that's broken down. And this was like a main line train service. I said, well, don't you have any way of getting around the train that's broken down? No, we just have to wait until somebody comes and tows it away. And you're thinking, with all the train networks we've got in this country, and you see places like Crewe, and you see, you know, the number of different railway tracks, how can you only have one track that goes north and south? What's that all
Somebody
about?
clearly didn't build a siding anywhere near it, did they?
Yeah, I mean, you think that wouldn't be tough. Anyway, listen, it's 6:32, coming up 6:33. Front page of The Sun is a great one this morning. It's the latest in their Deliveroo Just eat. I was going to say just stop eating. It's a different organisation altogether. That's the government now. And the other bozos, what Uber Eats, apparently they've just nicked a load of them. So we'll come back to that. We'll tell you all about that. Coming next out, by the way, this is a picture on the front page 11 of the Daily Mail. That's Bournemouth Beach, right, which looks lovely. Lots of people in the water, lots of people on the sand. You know, very, very tightly, packed beach. Summer Monday, last Monday of June. Just struck me when I saw this, Peter, this morning. Some of these people are supposed to be at work. How many of these guys do you think are working from home?
Likewise, my wife and I had exactly the same conversation last night when we saw those scenes on the television.
Right.
Now, of course, some of the youngsters might have finished their A-levels, so they might be done with school.
True.
Some students might be home from uni.
True.
Okay, so I accept that they all might be out there thoroughly enjoying themselves. But there's still a huge number of people on that beach, and I wonder how many people said they're working from home that day and decided to go down and slap a bit of the factor 50 on or whatever.
Exactly right. And it's lovely. I mean, I'm not one of those that complains about the hot weather. I mean, I watched, I don't know if you did last night, and I always question why I do it, but I watched the BBC News at 6. They spent the first sort of 5 minutes, top story for 5 minutes, all about the heat and all about how hot it was, and then they wheeled out some bozo to talk about climate change and how the climate's changing, and now instead of getting a heat wave every 1 in 50 years, we get one every 1 in 5 years. But then they don't define what they call a heat wave. And then they said, oh, we think a heat wave is when they have 3 hot days in a row. Yeah. Right, that's a heat wave now.
So they say.
Yeah, I quite like the hot weather, I must admit. And I know there will be people, I had some critics yesterday who said some of us are housebound and some of us are, suffering from various different ills, and so it's not always nice for us, and I appreciate that, and I'm not trying to belittle you in any way, shape or form. But for most people, sunny, hot weather is a good thing. Yeah,
my darling mum found a bit of a struggle yesterday. I went and did her shopping for her and went over to see her. I'd got her a new fan and a handheld fan the other day, and she still finds it a bit warm. She's 96, and when you're older, you can't regulate your body temperature like you can when you're young.
Right.
So yeah, she finds it a bit of a struggle, but she was all right. But yeah, this whole beach scene,
but the
lovely
sort of catastrophisation of the weather, though, is not necessary, is it?
Yes. No, it really isn't. But here's another. See, one morning, 2 business opportunities.
Yeah.
Shall we start an air conditioning company?
Why not?
Because I think more and more people are going to go for aircon in their houses, aren't they?
Absolutely. Well, I promise myself every year, I must get myself one of those air conditioning machines. I was in Cyprus a couple of years ago, and I was in a shop, and they had this fantastic sort of straight, freestanding thing that you could just put in the middle of the floor. Yeah. And it doesn't need a massive exhaust or anything like that, and it just really cools the place down. But every year I forget to do it until it's too late, and then they're all sold out.
I wonder if there's a grant from Ed Miliband for you and I starting up this air conditioning company.
There's an idea.
I wonder if they'll give us a few bob, and I wonder if the solar panels will provide enough electricity to fuel them. You
would hope that would be the case. I was talking to my guy as I was driving in this morning, who said he had a nightmare yesterday because he has to put the air conditioning on quite a lot, and of course he's got an electric car. And electric cars, once you put the air conditioning on, only go about 10 feet. So, it wasn't able to do very much work as a result. Had to keep plugging it in. Yeah. Anyway, there we are. Let's talk about this. Did somebody say just nicked? It was a great headline on the front page of the Sun. Cops raid on migrant riders after the Sun expose. This, of course, is from last week. Thomas Godfrey, who was the Sun reporter that we spoke to last week, posed as an Afghani immigrant and managed to get himself a licence to drive around in an electric bike. Delivering food to people within hours, supposedly, of them coming into this country. So yesterday, immigration cops began cracking down on them. Let's have a look at Thomas Godfrey posing as a migrant.
Because I am not the person who owns this Just Eat account. In fact, as far as the person who owns the account thinks I am a channel migrant. They will be expecting someone called Daniel. I'm not. I'm Thomas. And I'm going to ask them how they feel about that.
Hiya,
I've got a drop off here for Rebecca.
Yes, perfect, thank you.
What did you order? What did you go for?
Wimpy.
Ah, superb.
Yeah.
People are coming over illegally from France and then working as Just Eat Deliveroo drivers. And then they can go around London, Surrey, wherever, just dropping off people's orders despite having no right to work.
No,
I mean, how do you feel about that?
No, that makes me a bit nervous now.
Yeah.
Bit nervous now. Well, probably so. They say immigration cops. You'll know this better than me. Are they immigration cops? Or are they Home
Border
Office?
Force. It's Border Force,
right.
basically.
So it's not the police?
No,
Right.
it certainly isn't.
No.
And, you know, huge shout out to Tom Godfrey and the rest of the team. Come on, Rachel Dale,
Yeah.
Tom Seaward, Jack Elson,
Yeah.
you know, doing a great job. And they've really stuck with this story
They have.
since they kind of broke it on June the 24th.
Yeah.
Then again on June the 25th. That clip from Tom, June the 30th. And today. Take my hat off to them. But, OK, so it's good that Border Force officers go to this migrant hotel in the Barbican in central London and start questioning these riders.
Yeah.
OK, that's good. But let me tell you, there's a column on page 4 from Baz Javid. Remember
Yes,
him?
I do remember him.
Used to be in the Met, right?
Yeah.
Senior officer. And he's now Director of Immigration Enforcement. And he writes this short column, and as far as I'm concerned, it's utter hogwash.
Yes.
Because this is just a headline-grabbing bit of good news.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be rolled out every day
No.
across hundreds and hundreds of migrant hotels.
And there's
We're not
tens
going to
of
see
thousands of them.
thousands of people
Right.
arrested.
And they're not going to deport them either, are they?
No.
What are they going to do with them?
And his last line in this piece, Baz Javid,
Yeah.
right, says, "There is no hiding place from our enforcement teams and you will feel the full force of the law." Yeah, righto.
Really? Right, you think?
Yeah, OK, well, let's see the busloads of them being
Yeah.
nicked then, shall we?
I know.
Let's see thousands of bikes
Well,
being
one of the
seized.
things that the Sun did was on day 2, I think, of the first expose. They went around to a few hotels just in London where you could quite clearly see dozens and dozens of these
Yeah.
bikes parked up outside, you know, where people were working from there. It's not difficult. You know, it's like a sort of encaptured criminal scenario. You know where the criminals are. You know where they're operating from. You know what they're doing. You know, what's to stop you just going down there? And I said this last week, steamrolling over all the bikes, you know, just make a big thing of it and lift all the blokes who are pretending to be working.
Yeah,
What's,
it really,
you know, it's not hard, is it?
As detective work, it really isn't the most challenging
not-
case
no.
you will ever be
You're
presented
not having
with.
to crack the case very hard.
No,
you know, it's
no.
all there.
Not a super sleuth.
Right. The other migrant story, and this one will really wind people up, is a picture, a great picture on the. It's on every paper, but the Sun have got it on page 5. A brazen migrant holding an expensive smartphone to film himself on a dinghy, right, leaving
Yep.
France for the UK. Now there's a load of them, and I think you can probably count. They call it a small boat. But it's reminiscent of those pictures you used to get from India when people are hanging off the train. You know,
Yeah.
there's thousands of them. I mean, there's a good probably 60 or 70 people on this boat, and there's a guy at the front of it. He's got one of his mates with his arm around him, taking a selfie like
Yeah.
that, you know, so that everybody can, you can see everybody in the background. So they're actually filming their trip across the channel now.
Well,
I mean, unbelievable.
As you may remember, the sun shone brightly on Sunday and the wind didn't blow.
No.
So we got another 585 illegal migrants
Yeah.
who washed up in 8 or 9 boats. I
Right.
think it was 8 boats.
Well, I hope that
right?
gets reflected in our migrant tracker, which seems to have stalled. There's something wrong with it.
Can you believe it? Another 585. And the wind didn't blow very much
No.
yesterday either.
No.
So let's wait and see what those figures are.
Yeah.
And with each and every illegal migrant who comes into this country, our culture gets diluted just a little bit.
Yes.
And everything we treasure, the Britain we love, gets changed just a little bit. And I would argue, not always for the better.
I don't think ever for the better, to be honest, in this particular scenario. Let's get a voice note from Andy.
I think it's brilliant that the police have finally started to crack down on these illegal delivery drivers. I just hope they come to Portsmouth and do it as well, because I actually do the job, bona fide. You know, I'm a proper delivery driver with all the right insurance, etc. If they come here, they'd have a field day. The amount of people doing it in uninsured, untaxed cars, etc., and also people who shouldn't be doing it in general, they really would clean up. So that's what my wish is. Cheers, Mike. Keep up the good work, mate.
Just one quick
Andy,
note,
good
Mike.
one, thank you.
One quick note, Mike,
Yeah.
if I may. I need to correct myself. This is immigration enforcement officers, not border forces.
Okay.
Closer examination.
So
of the
that's
Sun's
still Home
pictures.
Office, though, isn't it?
So, yeah.
So it's just a different branch of the Home Office.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Headed up by Baz Javid.
Yeah.
Yeah, righto, Baz. Let's see if your words come true or not.
Baz, there's no hiding place, Javid, as he's now known. You know, I'm always worried about things like that. Morning, Mike. It's OK the police arresting these delivery guys, but what will happen to them? Nothing. Close these companies down. End of, says David Aberdeen. Yeah, wasn't Angela Eagle supposed to be meeting up with these people, the companies themselves, this week? Remember last week when the story came out? She said, oh, yeah, we're going to crack down on this. We're going to meet with companies next week. Which is what they're going to say. Peter in Suffolk takes us back to 1976. You'll remember it. Mike and Peter, 3 hot days in a row. In 76, we had 3 months in a row, but we didn't call it climate change then. Funnily enough, somebody put a picture out of a woman walking in Trafalgar Square Fountain back in 1976. I remember because I was at school. My sister and my parents were away, I think. My sister and I bunked off at some point or other during the summer and lay on the... We had a flat roof in the top of my block of flats and got completely burnt to a crisp. Then went to see Tommy the movie that had only just come out, and it was so sunburnt I couldn't sit in the seat. I was like, you know, but that was great, you know. And here we are.
I had the great good fortune of leaving school in 1976, and so I spent that entire glorious summer fishing and playing cricket and hanging out with my mates.
Very nice.
It was wonderful.
Fantastic. And that's what used to be life in Britain, of course. 6:46, Peter Bleksley's here. We've got much more to talk about, including what Ed Miliband wants to do. He wants to make an area the size of, I think, the West Midlands covered completely in solar panels. We're going to talk about the nanny state monitoring restaurant calories that you take in when you're there. And also, we might talk a bit about Wimbledon as well, because we did rather well. It's the first day of July, ladies and gentlemen. It's very, very exciting, because I always like it when you get moving into a new month, you know, a clean slate. I mean, still bad news for Keir Starmer, I'm afraid. Nothing's changed for him. Let's get a voice note from Alex on Rachel Reeves.
Morning, Mike. Excellent show. This is Alex from Cardiff, who's now on holiday in Crete. Make my blood boil. Rachel Reeves, mean test this, take away money from that, hide your savings, just get out while you can. Let the country sink, and that's why I'm going to go for dual nationality and try and live in Greece. It's game over for the UK. As for Peter Bleksley, mate, take your money, take it while you can and run away.
To Crete,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, ordinary people who wouldn't otherwise think about leaving the country are actually seriously considering it. The number of people I speak to, it's quite remarkable. There's one from Dan here who says, do you realise there are 2 helicopters above your studio? The answer to that is yes, because there's something going on which has to do with the new Superman movie. I believe that there's some kind of inflatable Superman flying around the Shard. I don't know if you spotted it when you were outside.
Well, of course, as I arrived at 5 o'clock this morning, whenever I see a helicopter above, I kind of go
assume it's
like,
a police helicopter.
Right, so what have I got to do here? Have I got to take cover? Is there somebody I need to pursue that I can help detain? You know, those old instincts just immediately kick in.
Sure.
And then, fortunately, it's a publicity thing for the new Superman
movie. So, thank you, Dan, for letting us know. Question for Peter here, from Peter in Norwich. If a crime is pointed out to a police officer to be in progress, can that officer decide what laws he or she will enforce or ignore?
He should know what laws to enforce. He should have been sufficiently trained. He should have learnt about it. He should have done practical examples of it in his police training. Sadly, police recruitment, vetting and training is not what it used to be, and we're all paying the price for that. But yes, Peter, he should absolutely know the law.
Yeah, he absolutely should. And he shouldn't have discretion as to which one of those laws he then decides to implement, right?
I like police officers having discretion. I think it's a really important part of policing. But of course, that discretion kind of grows with experience when you're being shown, because sometimes there might be 2 situations that are very similar. One where you might say to somebody, go home, mate, behave yourself, or you'll get nicked.
Right.
And another situation, quite similar, where you might actually go, enough's enough, you are nicked.
Right.
You know, so sometimes police discretion on the ground, I think, can be a good thing, particularly in local communities, and building trust and applying common sense.
Yes.
Something that this station is laden with.
One of those great phrases that really sorts everything out if you want to use it properly. How about this? Page 10 of the Daily Mail. Miliband wants solar panels to cover an area the size of the West Midlands, and this is why we get figures from this maniac, right? This is by 2030. Apparently, at the moment, houses powered by solar in 2025 are 2 million. I don't know if that's that's current or whether it's what they want it to be. By 2030, they want it to be 9 million, which is, about more than 4 times as many. Percentage of land covered by solar panels at the moment in 2025, 0.1%. By 2030, 0.4%, which would be equivalent to the size of the West Midlands.
Moribund Miliband, as I call him, right? All his words just fall on deaf ears because we are not getting cheaper energy.
No.
All that stuff we've been promised, right? None
we
of
get
it's
told
happening.
today on the news, don't worry, your energy bills are going down by 150 quid. Well, it's a drop in the ocean for most people.
Yeah, and well, when?
Yeah.
Like, show me, right? Where's my bill? I just opened my bill.
Yeah.
I don't see it. And so these kind of initiatives and this lunatic drive towards these net zero targets, which are coming at huge cost, considerable inconvenience, and the public are not buying into, are just hot air, funnily enough. No one's listening.
No one is. And also, funnily enough, a story which is not completely unrelated to that, and more bad news for Keir Starmer as he comes up to his first birthday. Nissan plans to cut hundreds of jobs at its Sunderland factory because they're scrambling to boost profits amid slow demand for, guess what? Electric vehicles. People don't want electric vehicles because they know that they're not as reliable as petrol vehicles. They know that they don't go as far as petrol vehicles. And despite the fact that an awful lot of them are being driven around in London, you'll see it. If you're going long distances, it's no use to you, especially in this weather.
And of course, as you brilliantly pointed out this morning, stick the aircon in one.
It just all dies. I know. It's absolutely shocking. What about this? Keir Starmer once again gets it wrong. They wanted to bring in a ban on alcohol advertising in this country, right? And it now turns out that the Americans have said, hang on a minute, if you start banning alcohol advertising, that means all of our big drinks giants that sell things like Jack Daniels and various other American alcoholic drinks, tequila I suppose would be in there as well. They're saying that would constitute a non-tariff barrier to trade, and an official intervention is now expected from Washington. Thank God for Donald Trump, is all I say.
Especially if an American brand wants to launch a new product. And of course, they will splash it with a load of advertising worldwide because they want that take-up. And if a new alcoholic drink of some description, whatever that may be, is then denied advertising space on the airwaves in the UK in whatever form of advertising,
because of some nanny state nonsense.
So they're going to say this is a barrier. Yet again, have you really thought it through,
Absolutely
Mr. Prime Minister?
No.
Or is it like your welfare bill where you weren't across that brief, or this where you clearly haven't thought it out, or just about anything you care to mention where you haven't really thought it out?
No, I mean, that would appear to be the problem with Keir Starmer. There's a great piece in the Mail, actually, written by Niall Gardner, who is one of Mrs Thatcher's former advisors. I'm just going to try and find it, because the headline itself is just fantastic, where he basically says that it's absolutely and utterly ludicrous, the situation we now find ourselves in, with a politician who should never have been made. Here we are. Starmer has Starmer has no energy, vision or strategy for Britain on the world stage. He offers only weakness, decline and a disregard for a sovereignty of this nation. And he really does. I mean, that is it. 12 months of chaos, as we're going to be telling you. In fact, we should play that little thing, should we? Have we got time? This is what we're putting out on Friday. It's a little special that we put together, looking back at the 12 months of chaos of this government. Check it out.
They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel.
Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall. It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
Happy anniversary, Sir Keir.
Well done, mate. Here's another one for you. Restaurants will be forced to tell the government what their customers eat under nanny state plans drawn up by Labour to tackle obesity.
If I've had a good week and I've earned a couple of quid, one of the real joys in life is on a Friday night going out with my wife or maybe some friends for a well-earned dinner. No washing up, no cooking to do. Let's have a great time and maybe a bottle of 3 of wine.
And maybe stimulate the economy a little bit while you're at it.
Exactly.
You know.
What I really don't need is some nanny state government splashing all over the menu how many calories I'm going to eat.
They've already supposedly got rid of that, haven't they? I mean, you're not supposed to have that anymore. It was the Tories that introduced it, to be fair, and then they said they were going to take it off. But this is now worse than just telling you this is how much your hamburger is going to put weight on you. This is actually them having to give that data to some government organisation.
Imagine
so they know what you're eating.
waiter. Imagine, boy, would you like soup of the day at 395 calories, Mr. Bleksley?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm just have to get on the phone to the Department of Health to let them know you're eating it.
Yes.
Just in case you have a heart attack. Speaking of which, finally, because we're nearly out of time, apparently British doctors will be given priority for NHS jobs under new plans. I mean, what's going on? Why have they not already got priority?
Doesn't it just make you shake your head?
It really does.
Why haven't we prioritised English, British doctors and nurses forever?
I know. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Let's bring in a load of doctors that don't speak such English that they can actually tell us what to do. Anyway, Peter Bleksley, an absolute pleasure to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
For all your help.